Painting panel lines with acrylics is hard. It requires precision, patience, and a steady hand. But what's this? Panel liners to fill the recesses without all that pesky precision? Let's put them to the test and see if we can get enough experience for a hobby level up. So today I'm looking at AK panel liners, but various other companies have their own brand of panel liners, including Tamiya and MIG. These are designed for shading recessed details across your minis to help give the illusion of deeper shadows. More specifically, they are used for panel lining, also known as pin washing. This is a neater effect than going in with an overall wash, as you're focusing just around the recessed details and not spreading all over the other surfaces. So what makes these different to an acrylic wash? The first thing to address is that these panel liners are not acrylics like most of the paints in my collection, but instead are enamel paints. These are very similar to oil paints, which means that unlike your Agrax Earthshade acrylic washes, which can be thinned down with water or a water-based medium, for these you're going to need some white spirits or turpentine. As a through and through Warhammer guy, this is my first time using enamel paints, but they have been and continue to be very popular in other model communities, including model trains and scale modeling. So how do you use them? Well, first we're going to need a little bit of setup. Now these minis were initially painted with acrylic paints. I actually painted them up on the live stream, which you can check out every Tuesday at the new time of 7:30. Now let's apply a layer of gloss varnish over the model. This is going to help protect the acrylic paint underneath and also help us in the application of our panel liner. The varnish serves to fill in the gaps between any unevenness in the paint, think satin rather than wool, which is also what makes the surface more reflective. Now using a loaded tipped brush, I'm going to apply the panel liner into the recesses around the legs of this marine. You can see it flows easily off the brush and into the recess. There's a lot going on here, but one of the reasons why the paint is flowing like this is due to something called capillary action. Here you can see these hair-like strands as the action takes place, and these will even act against gravity flowing upwards as the forces between the molecules cause them to spread out. Now capillary action does work with water-based paints too. Try this. Take some water and apply it to your mini. Now take a paintbrush loaded with paint and apply it to your watery surface. The same effect is observed, though you'll note it's a lot harder to control. The advantage to enamel and by extension oil paints is that some combination of their surface tension and viscosity really lends itself to this capillary action. Using enamels is really as simple as that. I'm glad to have got my first experience with them here, and they're a lot less daunting than I thought they were going to be. I think I was worried about them because of the idea of using harsh chemicals and mostly just habit, but they really are a useful addition to any painter's toolbox. Let's see a little side-by-side of the workflow between these enamel paints and my previous method of pin washing acrylics. Gloss varnishing the surface is still a good idea here, and it's actually something I'm going to be adopting for any acrylic panel lining that I use going forward. I'm using Agrax Earthshade for my acrylic, and the enamel wash, though it can be thinned with white spirit if required, doesn't really need it. The stronger capillary action of the enamel really takes the win here, flowing easily into the gaps. The acrylic does have some capillary action, but nowhere near to the same degree. Leaving to dry, the acrylic paint here has a much shorter drying time. I'm surprised at the vibrancy of the acrylic paint, as from my research, oil paints are generally favoured for their colour. I'm assuming that because these are part of a set for panel lining camo, they have a slightly more realistic colour palette, so won't be going as vibrant as something like Agrax Earthshade. Now for neatening up. With the enamels, it's just a case of cleaning with a cotton bud. The acrylics, we aren't so fortunate, will instead need to go over with the original paint colour in order to clean up those surfaces, which can be a real nightmare if you've done airbrush work or something that's going to be difficult to replicate. Here's the completed effect on both models. Now, I think I'll be the first to say that I actually prefer the colour on the acrylic paint here, but colour woes aside, there are some definite pros and cons to each method. If you're just starting out and you're used to hobbying away with acrylic paints, then enamels aren't going to give you too much extra. You need to work with white spirit, which isn't the friendliest if you're painting with children or if you don't work in a very well ventilated area. Additionally, your brushes are going to get wrecked by the white spirits over time, so make sure you're using synthetic brushes and not any expensive sable hair brushes. I've even heard horror stories of people not applying the gloss varnish and then the white spirit or thinners eating through the models underneath. Now, while these may be apocryphal, it's always worth bearing in mind, always do a test model before you start on a whole army scheme using paints like these. Now, on the colour, as I wasn't happy with the depth of that desert camo panel liner, I did actually do an additional little test just to see some of the other colours. I tried out the blue-grey panel liner on the white armour of this Apothecary Biologus, and I have to say that I'm really impressed. The ability to clean up the panels of the white armour with just a quick wipe from a cotton bud is going to be a godsend when it comes to painting white armour in this way. Another model from the Leviathan set that might benefit from this is the Terminator Librarian. What I'll definitely do is use some of the black panel liner, which is actually white in colour, in order to get into those recesses for the runes. As for shading yellow, I think for the moment I'll stick to Agrax Earthshade, but I'll be applying a gloss varnish before I do it, as I could really see the benefits with my test model today. This experience has also left me really excited to try coming up with a brown oil paint which will fulfill the same purpose while also having the advantages of being able to be cleaned off with the cotton bud. All in all, I learned a whole bunch about enamel paints in the course of filming this episode, and I hope that you learned a little something too. If you did, please feel free to give me a like and subscribe to the channel down below for more fun videos like this every week. If you enjoyed this video, you're also probably the kind of person who'll enjoy the friendly and lively discussion on my Discord channel. You can check out the link to that in the description down below. You can also check out the live stream, 7:30 every Tuesday. And until then, my name has been Ollie. This has been my hobby, and I'll see you next time.